Thank you. Thank you so much, the chairman of the occasion. Your Excellency, the Governor of Cross River State, my dear brother, distinguished Senator Bassi Otu, the chairman of today's occasion, His Excellency, distinguished Senator Pius Anyim Pius, and former Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Federal Republic of Nigeria. Your Excellency, Princess Patricia Obila, ably representing my dear brother, the Governor of Imo State, Right Honorable Francis Mwefuru. Our leader and great philanthropist, Prince Ato Ezenuko, Chief Uzodimma Okpara, the chairman of Dr. Michael Okpara Foundation, distinguished senators here present, using my own senator, Senator Osita Izunaso, as a direct point of contact to enter the National Assembly complex to acknowledge the presence of other senators and members of the House of Representatives. The Deputy Chairman, South, of the largest party in Black and White Africa, the All Progressive Congress, the Vice Chairman of the Southeast Chapter, members and leaders of our great party, the All Progressive Congress, Honorable Minister of Science and Technology and Innovation, Chief Uche Nnaji, and through him, other ministers, both serving and non-serving, in our midst. Your Royal Highness, Eze Cletus Ilomaya, the Chairman, Imo Council of Elders, and the Secretary to the Government of my state, Imo, and through him, other Secretary to Governments of all the 9 states and other states in attendance here. The Right Honorable Speaker of Imo State House of Assembly, whom I'm very loyal to, Honorable Chike Olembe, and other members of Imo State House of Assembly in our midst here this afternoon. Former and serving public officers here present, representatives of other governors of the Southeast, my dear brother, the Governor of Abia State, my dear brother, the Governor of Enugu State, the Governor of Anambra State. I want to acknowledge the presence of the Director General of Southeast Governors Forum, distinguished Senator Uche Ekwunife Iyom, heads of religious organizations, traditional leaders, women organizations that are here, members of the board of Dr. Michael Okpara Foundation, not forgetting Ambassador K. Emuche, the Secretary General of Ohaneze Ndigbo Worldwide, and other members and leaders of Ohaneze in our midst. Captains of industries, distinguished invited guests, gentlemen of the press, ladies and gentlemen. I want to, before we go into this lecture, which is now, I don't know whether it's lecture number 3 or number 4. having regards to the number of lectures we've received here this afternoon. Humbly in honor of the great hero we are celebrating today, acknowledge the death of one of his great followers that recently happened, the immediate chairman or president general of Ohaneze Ndigbo, Chief Engineer Emmanuel Iwanyanwu, and invite all of us to stand for a 1-minute silence in honor of this great son of ours. May the soul of Chief Engineer Emmanuel Iwanyanwu, Ahejagamba Ndigbo, and the souls of all the faithful departed through the mercy of God rest in peace. Amen. Sit down. I am most delighted to stand before you this afternoon, you, the esteemed audience, to speak on a topic that resonates with the very essence of public service, which is service above self, lessons from the leadership philosophy of Dr. Michael Okpara. As we gather here, we find ourselves at a crucial juncture in our nation's history. The challenges we face today, from economic hardships to social unrest, echo the trials of the past. Yet, in the inspiring legacy of leaders like Dr. Michael Okpara, we find a beacon of hope and a roadmap for progress. Dr. Okpara's tenure as Premier of Eastern Nigeria from 1959 to 1966 was marked by visionary leadership, unwavering integrity, and a deep commitment to the welfare of his people. His philosophy of service above self wasn't just a catchy slogan. It was a guiding principle that transformed lives and built communities. Today, I want to explore how this powerful idea of putting service before self-interest can shape our approach to governance and development. In the process, I hope to share lessons from Dr. Okpara's remarkable leadership and how it impacted Imo State, which was part of the Eastern region that he governed. But before then, let me recall that I have just returned from Lagos, where a few weeks ago, I delivered this year's public lecture by the Yoruba Tennis Club. So when I received the invitation for today's event, I almost turned it down because I didn't want my employers, the Imo people, to think that I was devoting more time to delivering public lectures and seeking the betterment of Nigeria above their immediate interests, which is my core mandate. But I reckon that if I had decided to turn down this invitation for any reason, some of my brothers and sisters might see me as Okammanama. They would conveniently have forgotten that it was not long ago that I delivered the 52nd convocation lecture of our own University of Nigeria in Nsukka. So I had to be here. I also believe that the good people of Imo State fully understand and that I will never check my duties, and that today is a day set aside to celebrate one of the greatest leaders of our time from the Southeast, our beloved and charismatic SY leader, popularly known as MI Power. Let me, at this point, express my deepest appreciation to the Michael Okpara Foundation and Verbatim Media Group for not only finding me worthy of the award, but also for the honor of delivering this lecture. Your invitation letter stated, Your Excellency, we are proud of your achievements. Your vision and programs for good governance and development in Imo State are in sync with the impactful spirit and development ideas of Dr. Okpara. I do not know if you were clothing me in a borrowed robes or just wanted me to play Elijah, clenching to the ropes of his master Elijah to have that power transferred to him. However, I'm immensely very grateful to you for thinking highly of me. Yet, that will not make me forget that we are having a conversation about Dr. Michael Okpara, whose shoes remain big for most of us. Almost 60 years since he left the political stage, we are talking of a man whose political philosophy, encapsulated in pragmatic socialism, appeared so simple, yet so deep. We are talking of a fearless politician who knew no boundaries, a man who believed so much in inclusivity as a weapon of conquest, and of course, a man whose fables regaled us as young adults and fired our zeal as leaders. Although he operated in a different space and circumstance, his ideals remain as fresh and relevant as they were 60 years ago. Yes, we can strive to follow in his footsteps, yet attempting a comparison will be presumptuous or even impudent. Now, it's instructive that while the event organizers asked me to speak on the topic, Service Above Self, Lessons from the Leadership Philosophy of Dr. Michael Okpara, they also graciously permitted me to use that same opportunity to share my experience in leadership and governance. As we are aware, tons of literature have been written about this legend and his legendary services to the people of the then Eastern region, comprising the current 9 states of Abia, Anambra, Ebonyi, Enugu, Imo, Bayelsa, Rivers, Cross River, and Akwa Ibom State. Some of us have been privileged to read this literature, which includes several books. One of the most fascinating of them all, in my opinion, is the one written by the veteran public relations guru, Mazi Kanu Ofonri. The book is titled Portraits of a Leader, the biography of Dr. Michael Okpara, published in Owerri in 1983. Another equally interesting one is Power and Governance, the legacy of Dr. Michael Okpara, by Onyema Ugochukwu, published by Dr. Imo State Okpara Foundation in 1997. What it means is that whatever Dr. Okpara did, whether it is about his philosophy of governance or his legacies, is already in the public domain. All we are now doing is to interrogate, analyze, and seek to understand why he did what he did. By seeking such understanding, we broaden our knowledge and enhance our capacity to improve upon what he did. We can describe Dr. Okpara as an enigma. We can also say that he was the elephant some blind men tried to understand each based on his perception of feeling. Above all, we can say that Okpara, dead or alive, has continued to challenge and stimulate our intellect and drive our vision towards attaining excellence in whatever we do in governance and leadership generally. I was only a year old when Dr. Okpara became the Premier of Eastern Nigeria in 1959. Before then, he had been a cabinet minister in charge of health and agriculture. Under the parliamentary system, you cannot be a minister unless you are already a member of the parliament. This implies that Dr. Okpara became involved in politics and the elections before the age of 39, when he became the Premier of the then Eastern region. By 1979, when he returned from exile, I was just 21 years old, and coincidentally, the youth leader of the defunct National Party of Nigeria, NPN, in my state. But his history had gone before us, which is why the National Party of Nigeria then worked so hard to attract him to the party. Before he died in 1984, the military did not allow us to fully put into practice his experience and lessons about the sustainability of the Second Republic. But there comes the personal qualities that defined the man, Okpara. Before we examine the lessons of his selfless service to Nigeria, and Eastern Nigeria in particular, let us examine the recurring qualities that define this great leader's life and political career. Number one, education. Dr. Michael Okpara was highly educated and qualified as a medical officer at a tender age before venturing into politics. Thus, he was equipped intellectually, mentally, and physically to deal with the rigors associated with politics and leadership. Most people who jumped into politics these days do so without even an address or occupation or profession, and are generally ill-equipped to confront the challenges of political leadership. When you consider politics as a meal ticket or occupation, your focus will be on acquiring wealth and not service. Additionally, Dr. Okpara did not want to be detained by the drudgery of the civil service. Hence, he boldly resigned to set up a private practice. Are today's politicians and aspiring leaders prepared to take a calculative risk for our future? In my opinion, any man who is not prepared to take a risk cannot become a successful leader. Number two, loyalty. Dr. Okpara was loyal to his leader, Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe. When there was a revolt against the leadership of Azikiwe, he was among the few who stood by him, because Okpara believed that betrayal was and still is a mortal sin in politics. None of those who betrayed the great Zik at that crucial moment became a premier. Okpara, through his loyalty, became not just the premier, but also the leader of NCNC. That is the stuff that leadership is made of. Most of our politicians today are not patient enough to learn that the art of loyalty is very necessary for a successful political career. Some are driven by the inordinate quest for money and position, to the extent that betraying their principles means absolutely nothing again. Number three, experience. Before he became a premier, as we all know, he was a cabinet minister. He learned the ropes from his masters. He understudied those before him and served diligently in lesser capacities. Unsurprisingly, when he was entrusted with the ultimate prize of leadership, Dr. Okpara excelled beyond the imagination of many. Some of us didn't serve as commissioners, even before becoming governors. But in my own case, I was an effective party man. Starting as a youth leader, I served as a board member. Let me pause for Mama Peace of Africa to sit down. The Igbos would say that you should learn to carry others' bags before others can carry your own bag. Do we follow this doctrine of tutelage as exemplified by the life of Dr. Okpara? Number 4, character. In most dictionaries, character is defined as a distinguishing feature of a man's life. It is also a complex of mental or ethical traits of an individual, which can also be summed up as his moral strength. If we must tell ourselves the truth, a weak man can never be a good leader. A man deficient in morals cannot be a responsible leader, because he would find it hard to differentiate between wrong and right policies. Finally, someone lacking in honor and with questionable character can never be entrusted with leadership. From grooming, Okpara emerged as a leader because he possessed these aforementioned intrinsic qualities which I have enumerated. But the philosophical foundations of Okpara's governance model has to be looked into. We need to look at the philosophical foundations that drove Okpara's governance model. This will help us appreciate where he was coming from and why he achieved so much. Okpara's pragmatic socialism. During the administration of Dr. Michael Okpara, the Cold War was at its peak. It was a struggle between capitalism with a free market economy and communism with a sprinkle of socialism. The emerging independent nations of Africa were torn between these two ideological differences, and it took its toll on the economies of various nations. As the United States of America and the then Soviet Union struggled for the global spread of their respective socio-economic systems and ideologies, Dr. Okpara abandoned them, developed his pragmatic socialism, and implemented his programs. A pedestrian definition of socialism would be the ownership of means of production by the state alone. Many socialists believed and still believe that socialism should be built slowly by political and economic actions of those seeking a more accessible and more just society. This is, of course, in sharp contrast with communism, which seeks absolute control of not just means of production, but also means of living. So both socialism and communism reject capitalism in favor of wealth equity, public control of the means of production, and the socio-economic power of the working class. So when Dr. Michael Okpara opted for pragmatic socialism, what did he have in mind? Let us first understand in this context what pragmatism means, since we now have an idea of what socialism stands for. In a layman's knowledge and understanding, pragmatism simply means being practical in a sensible way. In other words, it means dealing with issues or challenges sensibly and realistically in practical rather than theoretical considerations. If we accept that, it means that Dr. Okpara in his governance model was enamored by socialism only for as far as it was applied pragmatically to achieve the results he intended. In retrospect, I believe that this model drove his industrial and agricultural revolution for the 6 years that he was in office as the premier of Eastern Nigeria. In describing those years, a writer posited, under Dr. Okpara, Eastern Nigeria witnessed phenomenal developmental strides in all facets of life: education, industry, agriculture, and infrastructure. His legendary sense of urgency in the agricultural revolution could be appreciated through the establishment of the Eastern Nigeria Development Corporation. If we recall correctly, it was under the Eastern Nigeria Development Corporation that the phenomenal revolution in agriculture and industrialization gained traction under the Okpara regime. It was not a happenstance. It was a carefully planned initiative that was clinically executed with outstanding results. It was a product of the Eastern Nigeria Development Plan of 1962 to 1968. After a successful infrastructural development, the government discovered two important issues. One, the population of the citizens of the Eastern region was increasing, and therefore there was a need to plan for their feeding. That gave rise to agriculture. Second, many people were graduating from secondary schools and universities. Actually, over 300 expected graduates were being shunned out on an annual basis, and there was a need to plan for their employment in the future. That gave rise to Okpara's program of industrialization. Indeed, in his speech at the official opening of Nigerian Glass House Limited in Port Harcourt in August 1963, Dr. Okpara explained the reasons for industrialization, emphasizing the need to be abreast of technology, generate employment for the youth, and boost the regional economy. In the aforementioned development plan, the agricultural revolution was to go hand in glove with the industrial revolution to increase productivity and improve the standard of living of the citizenry. What happened between 1962 and 1966 is well known to all of us. Port Harcourt became the region's industrial hub. Many industries were built, including the prestigious presidential hotels, both in Enugu and in Port Harcourt. We know about the farm settlements and their usefulness. We know that more than 2 million cocoa seedlings were planted in the Ikom area alone. We know how palm fruits were processed, new seedlings planted across the region. When you see any cocoa plantation today, be it at Ajata, Ibeku, or Abozu in Ozakole, you know it is the imprimatur of Okpara. It is the same with rubber. Rubber plantations in Akampa, Ozu, Abam, and many others, and of course cashew plantations in Okigwe and Isukwato areas. My aim here is not to regale you with information already at your disposal, but to emphasize that vision and planning were the root of the achievements of that era. And the spread of the projects across all parts of Eastern Nigeria was a product of just mind. By the time Okpara left office due to the military coup of January 1966, the economy of the Eastern region was judged to be the fastest growing one in the world. Today, those who are agitating for the return of regional governments point to the fact that the Okpara's era was a proof of how a government can run efficiently with minimal interference from the federal, and then it becomes successful. Scholars have continued to also refer to that era as one that should signal the renaissance of purposeful leadership when there is a political will to do so. That, of course, tells us a lot about the leadership trajectory of this great leader, Dr. M.I. Okpara. While agriculture and industrialization were Okpara's signature projects, they were not only his core achievements. As a medical officer, he couldn't have left the health sector unattended. As an educated man, Okpara valued education and paid adequate attention to it, including a sizable investment he made in the University of Nigeria, Nsukka, to boost the training of engineers and teachers. However, his focus on agriculture and industrialization was in line with his pragmatic socialism aimed at controlling the means of production. His scholarship award and the building of basic infrastructure, including health facilities, aligned with his socialist inclination. After all, he was a member of the Zikist movement. It could therefore be said that he successfully passed through those philosophical orientations and triumphed, thus leaving unprecedented legacies in the region. The vital question is whether another person using the same governance model as Okpara would, whether the person could still come out with the same grand achievements. In other words, were those models and initiatives peculiar to Okpara such that it became difficult for successive governments after him to sustain and improve upon those legacies? This is a big question that we should try to find out. Why, after all this platform that was set out by Dr. Michael Okpara and the achievements that followed, why successive governments didn't continue to improve on them? Many will say the currency has lost its value because Okpara's annual budget did not exceed 20 million pounds. There are thousands of excuses, some genuine, others spurious, why the momentum of the Okpara era could not be sustained. But suffice it to say that Dr. Michael Okpara was in his class. Yes, when we examine the achievements of his contemporaries in other regions, we can see that they too made their modest efforts in development. However, the Eastern region was described as the fastest growing economy in the world. For him to have made that extraordinary impact globally, this son of a laborer who rose above poverty and deprivation to conquer his world was imbued with extraordinary wisdom, integrity, and resilience. Undoubtedly, he rose above his peers in all the endeavors he was associated with. Now let us try to go into lessons from his leadership philosophy. Number one, honest, selfless service. In 1995, the government of the United Kingdom set up the Nolan Commission on Standards in Public Life and charged them to identify a set of standards that would guide the conduct of holders of public office. In their report, which is now widely referred to as the Nolan Report, they identified the 7 principles of public life as selfless, integrity, objectivity, accountability, openness, honesty, and leadership. It is not surprising, therefore, that selflessness is the first of these principles. Selfless service or leadership refers to prioritizing the needs of others above leaders' self-interest. Selfless service is crucial for addressing societal challenges and delivering value for citizens. This usually requires the leader to regularly engage with the citizens in decision makings, fostering transparency and accountability. This way, a government or leader can build trust and legitimacy. Selflessness also requires physical responsibility and efficiency in using taxpayers' money to maximize value and minimize waste. In addition, selfless leadership is vital in advancing public policy objectives that benefit the larger society as a whole. Rising above partisan interests while focusing on the common good of citizens enables leaders to address inequalities and by so doing achieve greater and far-reaching success. From the foregoing, one can argue that selflessness was pivotal to the success story of the man we are talking about today. Despite being a premier for 6 years, Dr. Michael Okpara could not build a house for himself. The story had it that his friends hurriedly built a house for him so he could have a shelter when he returned from exile. There is no greater lesson than this as far as selfless service is concerned. This puts Michael Okpara in the same league as Mahatma Gandhi in India. He was a flamboyant politician, no doubt, but he was not reckless. He had unlimited access to public funds, but restrained himself from stealing. He always placed the common interest above personal gains. Like the leaders of today, he must have been tempted by contractors who handled road projects, housing projects, industrial projects, and many more, yet he remained true to himself. His rendering of honest and dedicated service without soiling his hands in corruption is an enduring lesson that those of us currently in public office should emulate. Public office holders should live within their legitimate means. I stand here to tell you that no public servant who lives within his statutory income will ever be hungry in life. However, temptations, pressures from different quarters, lack of discipline, and inordinate quest for wealth are responsible for the unbridled corruption prevalent in our society today. Number 2, integrity. Next to honest service is integrity. This is another prominent inclusion in the 7 principles of public life. Integrity is a summation of one's character proven over time. Integrity also means the protection and the honoring of one's name. Shakespeare captured it when he declared thus, "If you fish my name, you have taken everything from me." Igbos call it Eziafa or good name. It is a reputation built over the years. Okpara had that going for him. 40 years after his demise, he is still celebrated and called the epitome of visionary leadership and selfless service. Some former public officers or office holders who left just 5 years ago have been forgotten or remembered with hisses here and there. Number 3, inclusivity. I have taken time to study the Okpara phenomenon. One of the greatest legacies of his leadership was inclusivity. He was an Igbo man, yet most of his developmental initiatives were concentrated in areas outside Igbo land. Port Harcourt became the garden city because of Okpara. From the glass house factory to the presidential hotel and dozens of other industrial concerns, the administration of Okpara made Port Harcourt the industrial city that it is today. He worked for the greatest good of the majority. Thus, it didn't matter to him where projects were sited because he believed in comparative advantage in economics. Each city received attention based on what it could offer or where it had the greatest strength. This hall today is full of contemporary politicians. Can we do what Okpara did? Our honest answer should be one of the lessons from Okpara's leadership dynamics. By being fair and just, Okpara taught us an enduring lesson of leadership. Number 4 is followership. Okpara's simple and contented lifestyle earned him respect, earned him influence and followership. In Nigerian politics today, we have a lot of people in leadership positions, but some of them do not have followers. Leaders have to set ethical and moral standards which their followers can emulate. It is similar to raising children in a family. Children are taught more by the actions of their parents than their words. I am not in a position to say that it was this cult-like followership that saved his life during the coup. I will not also say that he was more popular than his peers because of that simple way of life. But I do know that his friends would not have gathered to build a house for him upon his return from exile if he had not learned one or two things from him. Especially, most of his friends attest to the fact that he was humble, he was honest, and that guided and brought him loyalty. Number 5 is meticulous planning. The Holy Bible forewarned that nobody sets out to build a house without first sitting to analyze the cost. The Eastern Nigerian Development Plan of 1962 to 1968 was the catalyst for the successes recorded by Dr. Michael Okpara during his tenure. As I mentioned earlier, he took a careful look at the progress his predecessor made and proceeded to plan for the future. I sincerely recommend that document. To our current and emerging leaders, not just because of its comprehensive details, but also because of implementation precision. Forecasting what will happen in 5 years with the application of variables made that development plan one of the best sought after documents. I sincerely believe that any leader who is as thorough, dedicated, and disciplined as Okpara will surely achieve the kind of result that he did for Eastern Region in the 6 years of his premiership. Number 6 is believe in continuity. One of the factors that contributed to Okpara's successful tenure was the fact that he stooped to learn from another master, the legendary Zik of Africa himself. As the premier, Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe laid the foundation. Okpara built on it. Okpara did not discard the developmental initiatives of the great Zik of Africa, but he improved on them. His 1962 to 1968 development plan was built upon an earlier one implemented by Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe as premier. Areas like education and road infrastructure were covered. Okpara built upon them and even leveraged their availability for his runaway agricultural and industrialization policies. The lesson, of course, is that government is a continuum, and anyone who wishes to succeed must first understudy those who have succeeded in the position they seek to occupy. Number 7 is political tolerance. It is instructive that Okpara's tenure lasted that long without any recorded scandal. I said recorded because I had tales of the man bulldozing his way during campaigns in the West, and that even when Chief Awolowo refused to receive him at the government house, he would still storm the place to register his presence. That is dynamic. It is charisma, devoid of any political bitterness. Although NCNC was dominant in the eastern part of the country, I didn't read of the opposition being emasculated or politicians being hounded because of their political affiliation. In other words, tolerance was a virtue as far as Okpara was concerned. The question is, are the present politicians towing that line? Number 8, acting with precision. But most importantly, the profound lesson from Okpara was that he knew how to strike when the iron was hot. He never tarried because of indecision or procrastination. He brilliantly embraced the policies and programs that have a direct impact on the people, irrespective of ideological differences. His pragmatic socialism benefited both the government and the people. It was like a man eating his cake while still having it. If he had given heed to those theoretical considerations before implementing the Eastern Nigerian Development Plan, what we know today of the Southeast and South-South would have recorded a stunted growth. But by shunning corruption and embracing developments, he wrote his name in gold. That, I believe, is the living lesson all of us should learn from his leadership. Now, taking advantage of the offer by the organizers of this lecture to link my Imo experience, there is no doubt that this inspiring story of legendary MI power has rubbed off on me in my tour of duty as the governor of Imo State. Although I didn't have the luxury of understudying directly with my predecessors, I leveraged the experience of this master and others like him. I said I was only 21 years old when Okpara returned from exile, but the impression I had of him and that of Chief Sam Mbakwe, another charismatic leader, prepared me for where I am today. Unlike others who had leadership thrust on them, it is the grace of God and my struggle that made me to become governor of Imo State. I started this journey in 2003, running for an election against an incumbent. After that, my people persuaded me to represent them in the Senate. That was in 2011. I served for 8 years in the Senate. After that, there was another invitation, this time from Imo people, asking me to contest for the governorship election for the collective interest of Imo people. I also responded. The election was held and I won convincingly. Listen. But the mandate was stolen. And I had to spend 7 months before I reclaimed the mandate through the courts. Thereafter, I hit the ground running because I was already prepared to be governor. I had my blueprint for the governance of Imo State, in addition to the manifesto of my great party, the All Progressive Congress. I was not deterred by the fact that there was no formal handover of power to me, nor by the fact that the state had been run down and abandoned. But I was determined to move on, and I did. Under my prosperity agenda, encapsulated in reconstruction, rehabilitation, and recovery, I moved fast to get Imo working again. Starting from the civil service, which is the engine of government, to road construction and reconstruction, my administration was able to restore and recover the years the locusts had eaten. Today, we can boast of having the most efficient and automated civil service east of the Niger. This is our pride. They are well motivated. The civil service is working. Salaries paid regularly and as at when due. Pensions and gratuities being given the attention it deserves. That gave me an idea of how to tackle other needs of the people. The Owerri capital city was without public water when I emerged as the governor of Imo State for 15 years. I restored that and it started working. Adapam Nigerian Limited, an agricultural legacy of Dr. Michael Okpara, was in ruins. I got it working again. Because the roads in the states were in terrible shape, I started working on them. As of November 2023, I had delivered on more than 100 roads, including the signature projects of the Olu-Owerri Road, dualized, the Owerri-Okigwe Road, and the Owerri-Umuahia Road. I also checked the perennial flooding in parts of Owerri City. In education, the administration is funding and running 3 universities, and the only state in Nigeria running 3 universities on their own, including several nursing and midwifery schools. We have also embarked on the rehabilitation of all primary and secondary schools in the state. The Imo State University Teaching Hospital, Olu, which was hitherto barred from producing medical doctors because of the inadequacy of facilities and the withdrawal of the accreditation, is now up and running. For the past 3 years, it has been churning out medical doctors. We have 3 brand new hospitals built and equipped to world class, and as well as getting others fully rehabilitated. As usual, our students maintain their premier positions in external examinations because the schools are once more working and now well equipped with qualified teachers manning them. It might interest you to know that all the farm settlements established by Dr. Michael Okpara in what is now known as Imo State have all been rehabilitated and they are in operations. Millions of palm trees are being planted across the state to stimulate more interest in agriculture for sustainable development. Encouraging food security was Michael Okpara's vision. Happily, it is the focal point of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's led administration. It is also the vision of my government. Currently, all the communities in the state are being encouraged to establish one agro-based enterprise through our One Kindred, One Business initiative, Okobi. This will stimulate industrial growth in the rural areas, create jobs, and stimulate the state's economy. With the excellent network of roads spanning the 27 local government areas of the state, the movement of goods and services has become more accessible, thus relieving pressure on the urban centers. For our youths, we have suffered unemployment due to the global economic recession. We created a Ministry for Empowerment and Digital Economy to equip them with relevant digital and other skills for employment and self-employment. Thousands of them have been trained in various skills and provided tools and money to start up their businesses. Women also benefited from the scheme. Also, under the Skill Up Imo project, thousands of other youths have been trained in the digital economy and the requisite packages presented to them. Currently, many of them are working abroad, while others have become employers of labor. The bottom line is that my government has been planning for the future of our youths. And just like the Great Okpara rolled out the Eastern Development Plan, I have initiated an Imo Development Plan, which will run from 2023 to 2034. Under this plan, which obviously will outlive my administration, a holistic and deliberate roadmap has been set for the economic renaissance of our state. I've already put things in motion through the dredging of the Oguta Lake to the Atlantic Ocean, which will change the economic landscape of not only Imo State, but the entire Southeast. The economic potential of this project is enormous, including an energy free trade zone, which will leverage the abundance of hydrocarbon deposits in the area to attract investors, bat industries, and grow a robust economy. The job creation potentials of this zone is excellent indeed. During my first tenure, I embarked on rehabilitating some moribund industries and establishing new ones through a public-private partnership. Adapan Nigeria Limited, Imo Standard Shoes, the Avoto Poultry, and others are among the beneficiaries of this initiative. Just like the Great Okpara, I also realized that having stabilized the critical infrastructure, especially roads, and knowing that our health and the education sectors were under control and running smoothly, I decided to turn my attention to the total industrialization of the state. Realizing that this could never be feasible without a regular power supply, the government of Imo State has entered into a partnership agreement, taking out advantage of the latest alteration of our constitution, removing power from the exclusive legislative list to the concurrent legislative list. We have now, working with our technical and financial partners, created a platform to generate, transmit, and distribute electricity to the 27 local government areas of the state. The rehabilitation of the abandoned Eboma power plant, which has been recently transferred to Imo State government, is pivotal to the 24-hour power supply. And by the grace of God, this power project will be completed and commissioned in the first quarter of 2025. I must thank, at this juncture, most especially the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, for approving that the abandoned Eboma power plant be transferred to Imo State, and now for Imo State to complete and utilize. This means that our artisans, small and medium-scale enterprises, and of course large industries will have uninterrupted power supply to power their businesses. This will certainly enhance the economy of our state and by extension, the economy of Nigeria. In anticipation of a booming business environment, Imo State government has entered into an agreement for the building of a 200-bed 5-star Marriott Hotel in Owerri and the full rehabilitation of the iconic Concord Hotel built by Sam Mbakwe to be managed by Hilton Group Chains. That would align with Okpara's vision of setting up presidential hotels in Port Harcourt and Enugu. It will boost employment, it will enhance the state's internally generated revenue, and help our tourist industry to grow. Our comparative advantage as an oil-producing state, which is also awash with gas deposits, will come in handy in our industrialization drive. While I have given you a snippet of my experience in governance, let me inform you that when I started this quest for the position of governor, I made a vow to God to govern with his fear through accountability and honesty. I will never know how Dr. Michael Okpara came about that he was able to emerge untainted in his political career. But I believe that remaining true to my vow will certainly help me so far. Because as I speak, nobody can come out openly to accuse me of corruption. My close aides, and I challenge anybody, my close aides who engaged in untoward activities never knew how fast they were thrown out of government. I'm still living like in houses. As the governor of Imo State, and still living in houses I built before I became the governor. A few weeks ago, when I addressed Imo legislators on the occasion of their first anniversary, I again emphasized the need for us to render selfless service to the people of the state and not to be driven by the acquisition of wealth. Since I'm a human being, susceptible to making mistakes, I set up what I call the Imo Stakeholders Forum and the Elders Council to interface with me regularly. I meet with the members who comprised of former governors, deputy governors, judges, first-class traditional rulers, student leaders, and market leaders. We meet periodically to render account of stewardship to them. This is a form of accountability, one of the principles of public service. These interactions give the members of the two bodies a chance to freely criticize and advise me on the policy direction of my administration. Above all, they act as a feedback mechanism between my government and the people to render gossip and fifth columnists jobless. Let me now try to conclude. At the beginning of this lecture, I sounded a warning that there won't be any comparison between what the great Okpara did in eastern Nigeria and my modest efforts in Imo State. If for any reason you have noticed some similarities between his policies and programs of those of mine, just believe that I am one of his apostles. If by chance you notice that honest and accountable leadership is the bedrock of my administration, the way Okpara piloted his affairs, then know that I am a student of the legendary leader. If I have voraciously focused on the economic revival of Imo State as a catalyst to the prosperity agenda I marshaled out in my manifesto, then know that I have indeed learned a great lesson from the selfless and the sacrificial leadership of Dr. Michael Okpara, the MI power himself. What is indisputable is that the legacies of MI power will continue to inspire not just our generation, but generations to come. This is why I once again commend the organizers of this lecture series for their efforts in keeping those legacies alive. In my view, Okpara remains a hero in Nigeria who has not been properly sung. Perhaps I should add that if only our political leaders of today could emulate the leadership virtues of Dr. Michael Okpara, our country will be better and more prosperous. Our challenge as his brothers, as his sisters, is never to relent in celebrating him. For indeed, he was a worthy son and noble son of Nigeria and the Igbo nation. May his great soul continue to rest in peace. And may his legacies live on as we do our best to promote and recognize his legacy. Thank you all, and may God bless all of us. Thank you.